Time to talk some Penn State football here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Please, if you enjoy the content, then hit the like button. And if you enjoy the content, others will as well. Then share the videos out on social media. Got Marty Leap on the line from Black Shoe Diaries on Penn State's SB Nation platform. Marty, how's it going today?
Pretty good, Mark. How are you doing?
Doing well. Looks like James Franklin and company are off to a good start in the 2022 class, second rated in the Big Ten, number 4 in the country. Of course, those numbers don't mean a whole lot, but 7 hard commits in the door at this point. And before we get to some of those guys, who's on the horizon? Maybe some targets out there that we could hear a commitment from pretty soon.
I'm looking at 2022, 2 guys to watch who could possibly be the next guys to hop in this class. Are both defensive linemen and both from McDonough School in Maryland, which has become a real pipeline for Penn State in recent years, actually. Defensive tackle Quan Williams and defensive end denied Dennis Sutton. And honestly, denied Dennis Sutton might be the biggest target for Penn State in this entire recruiting class. Their defensive end is a big area of need for them. And Sutton is a top 100 guy. Some sites have him top 50, borderline 5-star prospect. So, a guy rated that highly at defensive end, which has become very much a premium position in college football. And he goes to a school that Penn State has just recruited extremely well. Each of the last 4 cycles, Penn State has signed at least one player out of McDonough that was a 4-star or a 5-star prospect. In some cycles, there's been 2. So that's, whenever you have a player as highly rated as him at a premium position at a school you've recruited well, that's a very important prospect. And there's been some rumors that he could potentially look at this spring. And Quan Williams, his teammate who lines up beside him on the defensive line, also has all of his current 24/7 crystal ball predictions in favor of Penn State. And there have been rumors that he may look to end it even sooner than Sutton. So I think those are 2 guys to watch as potentially jumping on board in this class sooner rather than later.
Marty, let's go to the top of the 2022 board as it stands right now with 7 hard commits. Mekhi Flowers out of Harrisburg, top 15 at his position, wide receiver. Your thoughts about his play?
Flowers is a just terrific player. Honestly, I think he could be a top 100 guy at receiver or safety. Personally, I like him a little bit more safety, so I kind of hope that's where he ends up. But his heart seems set on playing receiver, and when you have a guy who's that highly rated, that talented, and from just down the street, it's still high, which is outside Harrisburg, you're going to, if he wants to play receiver, you're going to tell him he's going to be a receiver, get him on campus, you go from there. But yeah, Flowers is a real playmaker. This year, watching the single A state championship, now be it a single A ball, but still, he played that game on a bum ankle and was even on the bad ankle, was just head and shoulders above everybody on the field that day. And he is, for the fall, transferring to Central Dauphin East, which is a 6A school. So he will play against much better competition, which obviously that never hurts. But even at Stilton High Spire, which, like I said, for those who are outside the Pennsylvania area, is a single A school, but it's a very good program in PA. So even though they're single A, you're always going to get good coaching. You're always going to get good development still in High Spire.
All right. Caden Saunders is out of Westerville, Ohio, which is just outside of Columbus. We know who resides there. 18th rated wide receiver in the country. He's close to a top 100 prospect as well.
Yeah, Saunders, I absolutely love him. When you watch his film, it screams KJ Hamler to me, and I think everyone remembers how good Hamler was at Penn State. Saunders can play outside. He can play in the slot. He can be an absolute weapon in the return game. He's a very explosive receiver. He moves very smoothly. He has terrific hands. I think Saunders, when the day comes 4 or 5 years down the road, when you review this 2022 recruiting class, of the guys who are in it right now, and even if you look at some of the other targets on the board who could join it, I would not be surprised if you look at it and say Saunders winds up being one of the 2 or 3 best players and potentially the best playmaker in this class, which is saying something because they have some very highly rated guys already on board, and they are in the thick of it for some other very highly rated guys.
We've got Marty Leap on the line from Black Shoe Diaries. It's the SB Nation platform for Penn State athletics. Penn State with 7 hard commits in the 2022 class as it stands right now. Not surprisingly, most of them out of the state of Pennsylvania, including Drew Shelton out of Downingtown, top 13 rated player at offensive tackle, roughly, again, number 131, roughly a top 100 player.
Yeah, Sheldon, actually, he transferred. He will be at IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida in the fall, which, definitely a lot of good that comes out of that. I think a lot of times when fans see kids committed to their school transfer to IMG, they worry, either going down south or they going to stay committed. But Sheldon is maybe one of the most vocal leaders in this class. I don't think that's necessarily something Penn State fans have a lot to worry about. And being at IMG, he's going to get top-notch coaching. He's going to get top-notch development. And this is a weird cycle where IMG has hit the Northeast pretty hard. So there are a lot of other top targets of Penn State's that are going to be at IMG in the fall. So having Shelton around them certainly isn't going to hurt Penn State's odds with them. Sheldon, I think, can be a very good offensive tackle and probably pretty early in his career. It was a big early recruiting win for new offensive line coach Phil Troutline. Troutline just finished up his first year as the offensive line coach, and Sheldon, if I remember correctly, was his first commit. Rather, it was 2021 or 2022 recruiting class. They just clicked immediately, which was good to see because, excuse me, left tackle obviously is probably the second most important position on offense next to quarterback. So whenever you have a highly rated left tackle in state like that, you got to close out that recruitment. And that's something Penn State failed to do last year with Nolan Rucci, and all signs point towards they're going to do it this year with Drew Shelton, even with him transferring to IMG, which is great to see.
Important on defense is getting the quarterback, and a weak side defensive end of Ken Talley could be the next in line there. 11th rated at his position out of Philadelphia, top 166 prospect, 7th rated in the state. Marty.
Yeah, Talley's another kid I really like a lot. He's from Northeast High School in Philadelphia, which current Penn State grad assistant, former Penn State New York Jets defensive end Deion Barnes used to be the defense coordinator there with Talley, and that played a big role in landing him. As weird as it may sound to people outside of Pennsylvania, Penn State has not recruited Philadelphia well over the years. There's a lot of pull to the south for schools from Philadelphia and for this kids from Philadelphia. So Penn State has struggled to recruit there. So getting a guy like Talley on board was big to help with that Philadelphia pull. The success Shaka Toney had in his collegiate career is a big part of that as well, because he kind of showed to these kids from Philadelphia, hey, you can stay home, you can go to Penn State, and you can be successful. And while Shaka obviously is not in the NFL yet, he's going to be drafted this spring, and seems like he's got a good career ahead of him as pass rusher. So he kind of showed that you can stay home, go to Philadelphia, or stay home, go to Penn State, and still build yourself a successful career. And I think that, combined with having Barnes on the staff now as a graduate assistant, both played big roles in them landing Talley, who could have a big future for them rushing the quarterback.
Yeah, I was just running down the Texas A&M 20, 21, and 22 classes yesterday. 2 players for them out of Philadelphia had made it down to College Station. Anthony Ivy, wide receiver. He's out of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, number 23 at his position.
Yeah, Ivy's a kid I like a lot as well, which, I mean, I know I'm saying that a lot, but whenever you have a class that everybody in, it's a 4-star higher, it's hard not to have players you're going to get excited about. Ivy, he's not the most explosive receiver in the world, but in a way reminds me a lot of Jahan Dotson coming out of high school. Smooth route runner, soft hands. He goes up and gets the ball. He's never going to run past guys. But, I mean, we saw Dotson got into the Penn State strength program, has been able to add speed, add a little more agility to his repertoire, and everyone saw the season he had last year. So, I mean, I think that's very exciting with Ivy. Like I said, he reminds me a lot of what Dotson reminded me of in high school, and I think he can be that just solid, hey, it's 3rd and 6. We need someone who we know is going to run a 10-yard out, catch the ball, get us the first down. I think Ivy can very much be that guy.
Penn State fans, head over to Black Shoe Diaries. Check out Marty's work and the rest of the staff there at BSD, SB Nation, covering Penn State athletics, of course. Okay, Marty, we got Jerry Cross coming out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, tight end number 8 in the nation.
Yeah, Cross is not Pat Fryermuth. I think if you're thinking of Penn State tight ends, think more Mike Gesicki. Cross is a little bit bulkier than Gesicki was and probably going to be a little bit better of a blocker. But ultimately what Cross is going to be great at is being that vertical threat and that playmaker at tight end. And that's another position, we've really seen explode in college football in recent years with the spread offense and all of that. And that's one position Penn State has done excellent at. And I think that played a large role in landing Jerry Cross. He's never visited campus because of everything with COVID and not being able to visit campuses. I'm sure as soon as visits start up again, which hopefully will be here sooner rather than later, he will get to campus. But he's never visited campus. Penn State has had a coaching change at his position. And through all of that, he is stuck with Penn State. Now, James Franklin deserves a lot of credit for that. This is a recruitment Franklin's very heavily involved in. Anytime Cross talks to anybody, Coach Franklin's one of the first people he mentions. But I think the success Penn State has had in recent years with Mike Gesicki, with Pat Fryermuth, even to go back a little bit before that with Jesse James, who's carved out a very good career in the NFL. You see the success under Franklin. They've had a tight end, and tight end and running back have become two positions that pretty much recruit themselves at Penn State. And I think we see that a lot with Cross being in this class, and he's a guy who I think can be a very good playmaker and a real matchup nightmare for Big Ten defenses down the road.
Of course, every program has the next franchise-type quarterback.
Yeah, Bo is a guy who's really exploded in recent months. I think had there been a camp circuit last year, you really would have seen him take off and pick up a lot more offers than he has. Central York is very much the heart of Penn State country in Central PA. If a player from Central York gets a Penn State offer, it's something has to go catastrophically wrong for them to go to Penn State. So I also think that builds into his offer list as well. He can throw the ball well down the field. He puts good zip on it. His arm strength isn't the best, but it's better than adequate. He's a good athlete. This year he had probably the best single season a player has ever had in the history of Central York High School, maybe in all of York County. He led Central York to the first ever district championship, led them to their first ever appearance in the state championship, and was the Pennsylvania 6A Player of the Year. And in Pennsylvania, 6A is the highest classification. So he was playing the best competition and got the Player of the Year award. I will be very curious to see. All signs point toward there being some sort of camp circuit this spring and into the summer. I expect Bo to get out and compete, and I'll be very curious to see how he does. Now, and this is something I'm sure we will get into, Penn State does, by all counts, plan on taking two quarterbacks in this class because of losing two guys in the transfer portal this offseason. But I think Pribula will stick even despite that. Again, like I said, if you're a Central York kid and you get offered by Penn State, you're probably going to go to Penn State. And by the time Pribula gets to campus, Penn State might only have 2 or 3 scholarship quarterbacks. Right now, they only have 3. Sean Clifford's going into his redshirt senior year. He could come back because of the COVID year. But, you know, when you're looking at only having 2 or 3 scholarship quarterbacks, if you're bringing in 2 quarterbacks, that's still a pretty not crowded quarterback room by 2021 standards.
So who are the targets at quarterback?
They've really, that all started to change a lot after Mike Yursich was hired as new offensive coordinator, because Yursich has his own type of quarterback he's going to look for as opposed to what Kirk Straka was looking for. Plus, Yursich is a guy who has a great reputation with being able to coach quarterbacks. You know, you look what he did with guys like Mason Rudolph. Sam Ellinger had a better year this year under him than he had in the past. He was Justin Fields' quarterback coach for a year at Ohio State. You know, Yursich is known as a good quarterback coach and a good offensive mind. He's been giving out a lot of offers since he arrived at Penn State. I think 2 guys to watch most are probably Drew Alar out of Ohio and Nick Evers out of Texas. Obviously, Evers and Yursich had a connection when he was at Texas. Alar is a quarterback who looks ready to just absolutely explode. I mean, you watch his film and the ball just pops out of his hand with ease. I'm amazed that he's not rated higher. I know I read on 24/7 Sports a day or 2 ago that they said whenever the new rankings come out, they expect him to get a big boost. So I think Alar is definitely a guy for Penn State fans to watch, especially because he's in the region in Ohio, and Ohio State already has a quarterback in their class in Quinn Ewers, and Ohio State's quarterback room is already extremely crowded. So I have a hard time believing they're going to take 2 quarterbacks. So I don't think that Ohio State offer is going to come for Alar unless Ewers opens things back up. So that will definitely work in Penn State's favor. And as for Nick Evers out of Texas, I know reading some things with him, both he and his family like Yursich a lot. So I would not be surprised if we see either Drew Alar or Nick Evers end up in this class.
Talking Penn State football with Marty Leap from Black Shoe Diaries on SB Nation. And, you know, James Franklin has turned this into the second best recruiting power in the Big Ten. But a bit of a drop off here in 21, 6th rated in the Big Ten, number 21 in the 247 rankings. Do you think there was any particular reason why the class dropped off? Was that just total numbers, the 5-game losing streak at the beginning of the year? Anything involved there that you can point to?
The total numbers were definitely a big part of it. They only signed I want to say off the top of my head, I believe 16 kids. 16 kids. Now their average class ranking was 8907. The previous year it was 895. And the previous year, I think their class was like 11th or 12th in the country. So it was definitely a numbers thing. Surprisingly, that 4-game or 5-game losing streak didn't really hurt them because they withstood. They kept everybody on board through that. So I think that a lot of that just goes to show that they did a very good job of not just recruiting this class, but getting this class to be tight knit. There's definitely some good players in that class, So I think that the biggest drop off, like I said, stemmed largely from the numbers because they only had 16 commits. You add 4 or 5 kids to that, you get your usual 20, 21 commits. You're probably in the top 15 again.
So obviously the 7 enrollees already on campus have a bit of a jump here. They're going through individual workouts, their strength and conditioning right now. They go to spring practice and get the jump on everybody else that's going to join in the summer. Anybody in particular out of the early enrollees that you're excited about?
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, the 2 best players they signed in this class were offensive lineman Landon Tangwall and cornerback Kalen King, both of whom are early enrollees. King was a guy I definitely expected to play early. Now, Tariq Castro Fields announced he's going to come back for his 5th season, and John Dixon was added in the transfer portal, who was a starter at South Carolina. 2 things they probably didn't really expect. So that might cut into King's early playing time as a true freshman. As for Tangwall, I still think it's a possibility we see him on the field. I know that's rare for offensive linemen, but there's going to be positions to be had on the offensive line. They brought in a grad transfer in Eric Wilson from Harvard who will play a role, but I think that's going to be more of a depth role. So I do think we could see both Tangwall and King on the field from the early enrollees. Some of the other early enrollees, a lot of it is guys who may not necessarily make an early impact, but you look at Christian Bayou, the quarterback in the class. You always want to get the quarterback on campus as soon as possible. Rodney McGraw, who's a defensive end who has a very high ceiling, but is a bit of a project. Again, those project guys, you want to get them on campus as soon as possible. Start molding them in your strength and conditioning program. Same with offensive lineman Nate Bruce, who I know the staff absolutely loves out of Harrisburg High School, who Bruce is probably 2 to 3 years away. But if you take a guy who the staff they love his motor and just his constant go when he's on the field, you get that kind of guy into your strength program as soon as possible. You can be looking at a very good offensive lineman sooner rather than later.
Marty Lee, Black Shoe Diaries. Join him and the rest of the crew over there on SB Nation covering Penn State athletics. Marty, we always appreciate you dropping the knowledge for us.
Anytime, Mark. I always appreciate it. It's always a good time.